Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 4 o'clock. Roll call, Kim is here, Marianne is here, Wanda's here, MJ here is here, Jennifer, I am here. So we have a full, member, attendance. Oral communications for items not on the agenda. Does the board have anything else? Or not the board, I'm sorry, wrong meeting. Does the committee have anything to, I was thinking of a different. And we don't have any attendees, so, okay. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from June 18th, and as I always say, thank you so much. Your minutes are wonderful. We value you so. Does anyone have any corrections?
No, I was just going to move adoption, approving the minutes.
Okay.
You have a correction?
Yeah, I have a correction because I forgot to include, I think last meeting we agreed there would be no August, right? And I didn't put that in the minute.
I don't think we need to put that in the minute. We're going to discuss that at the end of this.
Oh,
I,
okay, all right. Never mind then.
as long as it was in the minutes, the next meeting.
So I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Yes. Who wants to second?
I'll second.
Okay, show of hands. Okay, so Wanda made the motion and so. Okay, we have approval. Okay, so Tim, take your time. First thing on the agenda, Fire Marshal.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be back. It's been a while since we've gotten together for one of the committee meetings, and I'm happy to be back. There has been a lot going on this year. This summer has been a lot. And I think some of the major highlights would trying to re-educate residents and out to everybody. And we've been putting out newsletters every month. Our public education newsletter is that we are wanting people to understand that wildfires are, and we need to prepare year round, and it's no longer a season. Some of our most devastating fires have happened outside of fire season. For example, at the beginning, who would have thought that we've had fires that destroyed so much, and there were a lot going on. And some of our other historical fires that have been, I think it's clear to say that wildfires can happen at any. We can see that it's because our season's the same. We have hot weather, dry weather, wet weather. All seems to be drier longer than it is. And with that, we have to make modifications. That's one of the biggest messages emphasize to people is it's a year-round thing, and therefore the maintenance is year-round. With that, we are looking at ways how we can our fuel mitigation services to residents, one of which will be to offer chipping outside of the chipping season that we normally do in October, offer it year-round so that people can utilize that service. Now, the chipping outside of the free chipping season at a fee, but it's just to pay the time of the staff that are doing it. So that infrastructure is still being built out. It probably won't, but it is one of the things that we're looking to do. And as well as offering fuel mitigation properties, perhaps seniors, fixed income households, disabled. We're working on guidelines of how we can help different residents with maintaining their property so it becomes, so we're looking at a lot of different things. One of the major things, because we know that that is one of the ways of preparing. Right now, it's been a busy year for me. It's a code adoption year, which basically means every 3 years, all the fire codes. And so there was a new bill that was passed. It was in a summary, put a moratorium on change building code. Me, meaning that it was to help support construction so there's not so many delays. But with that, the concern obviously be construction styles and materials are changing. We're not going to be able to keep up with changing our codes that meet safer ways of building things. They're just going to get built with what we have in place. So that's been a challenge for not so much for here, though it is we have a lot of residential. Commercial is a big thing, and thankfully we don't have too much commercial here, but we do have our residential. So that's been another challenge to review of seeing how we're going to work with that. Chipping season has been going well. We've had a lot of. One of the things that we're looking on educating for next year, along with that, even though they're reserving the date that we come out. So we do chipping Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday if it trickles into Wednesday. It depends on how many piles there are. Typically, it's just the Monday, but if a lot of people are done on one. So that's been some of the confusion that we noticed this residents call pile. It's because they haven't completed that area of the. But one of the challenges is if we tell people, oh, it can be anytime days, you run into piles after we've already completed that specific. And it causes them to say, oh, well, you missed me. And it was like, no, we didn't miss you. You just put it out after the fact. So we're trying to figure out ways of how we can get around and work that. But that they're still going to make a reservation for that Monday. We are getting better at our documenting. We are putting in, as we drive through residents, we're documenting every single address of people who have a pile as opposed to those who don't. Not just for that reason, but also for Firewise that will be able to tell a community, hey, in Firewise, there's this many houses and this percentage part. So that way we can start running stats and numbers. Firewise participate. So that's what's new with chipping. Another new change that we're doing a little restructuring in the prevention division. So currently the way the prevention division was, you had fire prevention inspections and defensible space inspections, everything that have to do with inspections. And then we had the fuel mitigation division, which our crews right away work and everything to do with our fuel reduction. And then we also have our last area was we're restructuring, not prevention, but we're calling it community reduction. Houses both fuel mitigation and public education and emergency. All of that actually is. So we're kind of changing a little bit of the structure, which will up a career path for other people in that type of that. So we're kind of doing a restructuring in that aspect. So that's been. We are also looking at hiring per diem defensible space inspector. We need to increase how many inspectors we have doing all the 25,000 parcels over. It's been very challenging. Like I've said in other meetings, our big challenge is people not being home. And even though we leave a door hanger and ask people to, hey, give us a call so we can schedule your inspection, we're not getting as many completed. So it's causing an impact on our staff because we only have them, but those guys are being tapped out with a lot of construction and plus other annual inspections we have to get done. So we're looking at increasing our volume with positions. Of course, we're under a budget, so per diem was a nice way to kind of start introducing. Because we don't have those, it's just our regular officers. So that's something that we're looking at implementing well and bringing on. And let's see, I think that's pretty much the major stuff. So thank you.
And Go ahead.
Just from my own experience with it, would it be relatively easy for you to confirmation when I sign up, 3 months earlier? Because like I was confused. My neighbor's street was chipped. Some other friends was chipped, but mine wasn't chipped. So I thought, oh, maybe I did something wrong. And I was just curious if the system would allow a
It does, it says maybe 2 weeks before your pickup
Okay.
date or something. Because I know how everyone's emails, things get lost in. So I know it's a 30-day prior to your pick. So that's definitely something we can look at, is seeing how we can close that up. That would probably be helpful.
Quick question. Can residents sign up for two?
So
more than
you can
one?
only, the dates that are already set up in the, are the same. The main thing is, so everywhere gets 2 pickups. You can only schedule your first one. Once your first one's passed, then you
Okay.
have to wait for your first pickup to be done. Then the next, then you can go back and set up.
Okay. So in theory, if you're on top of it, pickup, then you can sign up for a second one, like closer to
Your
fall.
fall one,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
I noticed driving around in Portola Valley, where there was a stack of, obviously, stuff had been cut, and it lasted for weeks. Is
So
there-
we tried to address that and we dropped notices to those residents like 2 or 3 months before their actual pickup date. So we tried to send out information. We were leaving notices back up on your, and you need to wait till it gets 7 days prior to your pickup day. We changed it to 7 days for that specific reason. Codes by all the, all whatever vegetation. That one of the challenges with that is there's a lot of people, it takes time to gather everything. So then you have that challenge. It makes, have workers helping them do it. They put it right on the street because then it allows for them to continue work and property. So we are seeing the challenge of both, which is why I am working on, I really want to, once we implement the year-round chipping, I think it'll help with that problem going away, because then we'd be able to do those additional picks. Rather than them waiting for those dates, it'll be something where you could schedule and say, hey, on whatever such a date, can you do a pickup for me? So that's kind of the goal around implementing that year-round ability.
Okay, I wanted to be sure you knew about it, and it sounds like you're on top.
Thank you, Wanda.
So following up, in Westridge, on private, on the property, on the curb, there were a number of properties who had big piles there for months, but it's not on the street. So it's in the public right of way, but it's not. You're handling that as well? Or?
If it's not on the actual road, because public right of way, we think of it, it's actually on the road, right? It's still on the road.
Yeah.
We're still handling those the same. It needs to be brought back up to the.
So I have questions about enforcement. So I know it's a difficult topic, and I know you're bending over backwards to partner with everyone. But I'm interested in 2 different areas. First of all, what is the percentage of parcels that have passed inspection, and the people that haven't passed? Are you getting a sense of, is this a major problem? Is this going to be a major cost? Have you got any pushback so far? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part is, have you, since you're not getting responses to your tags, have you started gently suggesting there may be consequences if you don't schedule, and how is that going? an image of what might next year be.
So the first part, to answer your question, pleasantly surprised, most people are getting the work. Then there's a percentage of people who are getting some done. We have a very, very small, I'm going to say almost like, where I could count on my hands, the number of people who are just not doing anything. But we're not on that enforcement time yet because it's still under 1 year. So those people will be getting letters and notices finding that you are 6 months in now and we have not seen any activity. And the ordinance says that as long as you're making progress, that we allow that 12-month period for you to be in compliance. So those people will start to get, because we're right around that time, they're going to start to get those. But the majority are doing work. So, and even progress and doing work, we're not tying them fairly to the 12-month because we are making sense. We know it takes time. As long as we keep seeing that and what they're doing is that, and then the other stuff is kind of like, okay, that's small stuff. And as they're moving along, they're getting that done. The second part of your question, the ones with the door hangers, we started to finally, because we weren't getting response, we started to track them in our system and marking those are leaving doors so that we could send a mass mailing to them, informing them that you have done nothing to contact us and that they are going to be given, we haven't done it yet, but that's what's coming. The mailing, it says you have 10 days or we will consider you non-compliant with the ordinance. And then with that non-compliance, if we hear from you, then we can start down an enforcement path where we'll give you opportunity inspection. We'll give you another, because the way the program is set up is you get 2 re-inspections path. So once we go back twice, we still have no luck with you, then start where inspection fee, or we can also have the property charge you for the work that was done. That's like getting towards the end of the enforcement period. And then up to where we report it to the county and it becomes property to recover the cost. So that goes all the way to that end. And that follows the process. Really hoping it doesn't get to that point, but it's going to be what it's going to be.
So I'm hearing for the properties you have inspected, you're pleased. Some people, some small percentage have passed, and the percentage that haven't passed, you think within a couple of years they'll be in compliance. What percentage have you been able to inspect of?
I can't give you a percentage, but I can give you the number. So started in July, our goal by July of this was to, because that was a 1 year, our plan was to finish 2,000. Right now, we're right around 11. We're halfway what we originally thought we could get done within that year. And that's because the majority of all those are people that have not contacted, that we've left door hangers for. The other side of it has been, we've had to take priority. So some other priorities have been, you just don't have enough staffing to get the defense, have all the construction going. And those, unfortunately, do take the priority because contractors, these paid inspections, permits, there's a whole process for that. And we have to put, so that coupled with a lot of complaints, have to invest. Those usually open up cases and those take time as well. So it's a little bit of everything, and we're doing the best we can with what we have, but at least we know where we stand as far as how much which is why we're looking at how we're going to support the defensible space inspection program or the home assessments for the residents, and we need to get more personnel to get those done.
So I've read a lot about enforcement, and actually this is a better progress status report than I would have expected. The first time you actually start inspections. Oakland did a huge study on this, and it's always the hardest, but once you get the first round of inspection done, it's it's much easier to get compliance. So this is, I applaud you guys. So because you're behind now, not behind, but because obviously it's hard to reach every goal, do you think Portola Valley's inspection, the beginning of our inspections will it be pushed?
Correct,
So you won't start Portola Valley until you finish the current.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, because we definitely don't want to, I guess, load ourselves to the point where it's because with all the inspections that are being done, that's more time because we go out, we have to go back, we have to see what progress has been done. So there's those challenges, and especially with Woodside, because Wood Fund program, we also have to honor those residents, which it helps with getting our Woodside done, but those are people who use program for utilize it. But the rest that don't really utilize it, or the ones that are not as aware, those are the ones who, when you get there, they have no idea what's going on. Oh, despite the multiple different efforts that have been done to make. So, like you said on the enforcement, I'm pleasantly surprised, but what I think helps is getting the first round of everybody done because continuous. It's not like one time and we'll see you in 20 years. This is going to be a continuous thing. So I think that will help. I think also, unfortunately, it always takes one to take one for the team. But depending on the level of enforcement that we have to follow, when one actually happens because someone pushes it to that extreme, it also causes everybody else to be like, better get in because they're actually going to take actions. I've never been afraid of following enforcement action. There's a lot of value behind it. It's just not my favorite thing to do because I always hope that people do.
Okay, so last point. So we probably won't get to Portola Valley till 27.
I would say mid next year is where I'm seeing that we would start.
So Matt, it might, just a food for thought, when you send the letters out, always send a letter. Sometimes these letters can be pages and pages long. You might want to have maybe the first paragraph to be, just remember, this is the simple thing that you now to prepare.
So what we're actually doing is we're not sending out letters anymore. It's just going to be a simple postcard. Very simple QR code gives you all the information that we're not overwhelming the visual effect of this long letter I got to read through. So it's just going to be in a postcard form. We're going to stop the letters because the letters are just not reaching, just a lot of cost on us, and between stuffing the envelopes, just the whole labor in itself. So we thought we'll go to postcards for next year. I think as we keep educating people coming and out media, PV forum and committee meetings and just getting continuous with people and talking to people, that's kind of where we're going to be going with that. So I think that might help.
And
As this is delayed and there might be actually an valley who would like to start, could there be something on the website that the people start themselves?
We already do when we start. There's a home assessment tool, and that allows residents to go and it gives them a checklist that we would be looking at on an inspection, so they could start preparing and doing. I mean, just because we haven't come around, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't start doing. The whole thing is to protect your home. So it's to prepare for that wildfire, right? So it's a good idea to start taking those, because it also helps you be able to do a little bit at a time. I was going to save it for my presentation, but I'll just say, what type of student were you in school? Were you a crammer and last minute? Or did you study throughout the semester little by little? Finals came at all the feel like this is the same thing. If you wait till the last minute, you're gonna feel like there's all this cost and all this. But if you just take a little chunk, a little bit at a time as you go through the process, it's gonna minimize how much work you have to do by the time we come around.
Mary Ann, I hope conservation will take advantage the next year or two to get a message out. Plan now. Don't panic and rip out everything. Delayed. I mean, conservation, something simple. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a great presentation that I think went really well for people to be able to see how you can still be mindful of the land, but still be.
So I think that ends the committee questions. Is there any for on the subject of fire marshal updates from attendees? Yes, go ahead.
So, in the midst of all of this, in 27, so starting to prepare in, you'd have your 3-year revision of potential revision of the ordinance, right? Am I correct in
No,
that?
so the ordinance I can update. It's not like the fire in the building. I can modify the local ordinance any.
So you don't have a time that you're thinking, new ideas that people want to put in front of an ordinance review?
Not at
time?
this point. If I do, it's something I would have, I mean, people can always submit feedback at any time. Hey, consider this, or, whatever it may be, they can always send it in, mail it, email it, whatever. So that we can make those considerations as they come in. But right now, as I was saying earlier, am working building in the fire code. The ordinance will probably come within the next year for the fuel mitigation.
Okay, I think we should move on to, oh, I'm sorry, MJ, you had a question?
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the board meetings, but I was wondering what's the status on the hazard map?
So we were right on time with the hazard maps. If any, one of the early birds that completed our adoption and ratification of it. But it was adopted as presented by CAL FIRE. We could not go less restrictive. So there are some areas on the map that it's like down the middle of their parcel, and or there's grayed out area that meant, which I still don't know what that means. We're hoping from the meetings that I've had with CAL FIRE that those are things that will be rectified over time. I don't know when, but what I can say is the hazard maps, I'm hoping because of the reduction in level of hazard, maybe it'll help residents with insurance. Oh, residents think that insurances look at them. When I talk hazard, we look at risk. So, everyone's got their own interpretation. I can say is the hazard maps don't really me as a jurisdiction because I look at the risk. I know what the risk is, and we have an ordinance that's in place that doesn't matter what hazard you're in, that you still need to be in compliant with all our local regardless. My biggest thing has been the understanding of why the hazard maps were there to begin with. It was a state law that was put in place a long time ago because there were no ordinances at the time that really told what people were doing in moderate, high, or very high. They had to. So that's where the hazard maps came to be a long time ago. With all the wildfires we've had through time, we could see the damage and destruction that it's done regardless what level of hazard you're at, because if anything, a lot of studies were showing that homes that were in the very high hazard were not getting as severely destroyed as those in moderate, but that's because of the laws that were put in place. People I knew taking steps of precautions to protect their structures back then, and people in the moderate, since they were in the moderate, and there was nothing that governed it, they were like, ever. So that was one of the biggest goals when we did adopt this order. It goes wherever it finds fuel. And that's why it didn't matter for us what category of hazard you're in. There's still a risk regardless where you are. So that's the big with the hazard maps, but they've been adopted. And if it does come down the middle of your, as far as planning goes on the building side, when you're doing construction, it's looking at both ends and gets made structure, we have to actually go a better determination and recommendation.
So do the maps only have to be accepted by the fire? By the town?
No, because we're a district, we can adopt for everybody. Then what the towns can do if they choose to is to ratify them. So once we adopt them, they're adopted as they are, and it was the way the law was written is the authority having jurisdiction us because we provide the fire services. So that's why we took that on as adopting that. And then
I will also say, if you're in a high fire area, you're more likely. So it helps with grant money. And unfortunately, that doesn't help us.
no, because we were reduced pretty much almost everywhere, just small areas stayed.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, let's move on to the fire marshal station, preparing for wildfire lessons learned. Thank you so much, Kim, for making this.
Okay, so before I get started, and it's possibly, I call them lessons learned because we can learn something from them. It just is providing evidence as to if things are working or not working with hardening and space. Because really, when research presents a lot of what it's either taking practical experience like it or a controlled environment where they're trying to create something to occur so that they could see what happens from it. So it was interesting to see what came out of the fires and to support what we've been recommending for home hardening. So I leave that opinion up to the audience. I'm just going to present on what was observed and give some thought. I did title this presentation Adapting to Wildfire is Fire. And the reason I did that is because we live in a really beautiful area. I mean, we're so fortunate to live in where we do. But we also have to understand the history behind a lot of our state for a lot longer than we have. And we have to learn how to live with it and how to prepare for it because we have built a lot of construction in areas that were heavily forested and we developed the lands. So we can't fault fires for how they happen and where they decide to burn, even though the majority of fires that start are usually some kind of human interaction. It's not necessarily a natural, lightning strike, though it's happened, but the majority of our fires have been. Anyway, I wanted to call this because we have to learn to, and rather than trying to, it's like picking your battles. We have to know what battle we're going to fight and how we're going to fight it. And we have to learn how to get along with the fire that's coming. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Okay, so the topics I'll be covering today: history, shifting the paradigm, what can we do as responsible homeowners, and where do we go from here? I put the QR code up because I knew I'm going to, from experience of doing these, it's very hard for me to show the video while everyone's on. And so rather than me showing it, I wanted to provide the QR code. Sign for Disaster is based on the 1961 Bel Air fire, which, as we know, the fire that just happened here in January was at the Palisades where Bel Air is. And this documentary was done. And I'll tell you, I think it's only maybe not very long, but it's one of the best documentaries on wildfire I've ever seen. I learned more from this film than any research that I have read over time since I started at Woodside Fire. They knew so much about the topography, about the wind, and what happened and what drove this fire. They learned so much, which baffles me that this happened over 50 years ago, and yet we are where we are now, and we didn't take the steps in all these 50 years until now to now we're starting to be concerned about wildfires. So this fire that happened, it actually in our history, one of the first well-documented wildfires in California. And because of this fire and the damage caused, started to change a lot of our fire codes and laws that were put in place. One of which was the removal of wood shake. That came out of this fire. That was one of the big changes. That was back in 19. So I urge and encourage everybody to watch this documentary so you can learn a lot about what we should have go. But hopefully we finally got it all these years later, and we're starting to now make changes. Plus, I love doing the whole documentary. This one, oh, good. So the history of fires, I put this up. It's also on our website, but it's just interesting to look at the histories of our wildfires in California. We've had them for a long time, but it really didn't start to take off till 2000 fire. And the amount of destruction and lives, that's when started to see this trend where been, as the media likes to say, the worst wildfire season ever. However, every year is the worst wildfire season. Our worst, most devastating one that I can say in my experience was the Camp Fire. That one took the lives of 85 people, and it wasn't even in a WUI area designated, if you will. And it's important for us to understand our history, where we've been, so that we can start changing for where we need to go. And that's why I put the history up there, because sometimes I think we forget what we had before the Palisades fire of January 2025 that we had. The media covered that a lot. It got a lot of press, a lot. And the number of structures destroyed were not that many, not by many as our other historical ones. Lives weren't even lost. But it actually saddened me to see how much coverage it got. The Camp Fire didn't get nearly as much coverage, and that one was much worse because we were talking about people's lives, not the cost of their homes or the area that they're living in. And so I put this up because it's a reminder that it doesn't matter where we, one life is too many to lose in these wildfires when they're to change where we're going in our future. So here's the lessons learned. The research was done by NIST and a presentation. Never say her last name, Volachovich. She's done a lot of presentations on fires, home hardening. She's gone to a lot of locations on site in looking at how wildfires have burned, where they've burned. And this one was her most recent presentation done after the So the slides that I'll be showing you from her presentation of what she talks about and how she compares on what's being recommended and to what she saw of saying, hey, this is a good example of how this worked or didn't. We always think of those miracle houses, right? Great explanation why. So first, one of the things was looking at vents and windows. This is why we talk about double pane windows. Because when windows fail, you know, you could have a stucco house and have a perfect house. But when the windows fail and the smoke comes in, smoke is hot. And once that smoke gets in and the embers start to fly in, I mean, our houses are completely combustible all over inside. I mean, and because of how materials are in our furniture and how they've changed, they burn very hot and very fast. So windows are an important part of your home hardening because you want them to survive for as long as they can because that's going to help with the intrusion. The vents are the other big thing, the flying embers that go in, whether your vents are in your roof or in your basement. Most people put storage in their roof. You have an attic space. So those vents need to be protected. IBHS does a great video on vents for an attic space. It was showing how the size of the vents and the embers flying in, how hot they are. And even when they land and you have no storage, the fact that they'll either fizzle out because there's nothing else around, or if they find something. So that's part of that. Once they get to your house is done. The goal is to do everything you can to build the exterior of your house so it's not vulnerable to all those embers and vegetation. See the bottom right corner of the picture? These are all from the same house, but you could see how that house burned. And what she pointed out was she saw all the openings in the fence, and part of the conclusion, a lot of it. And you could see patterns too. Came up when I first did the ordinance. People asked about the garbage can. Garbage cans, 5 feet of defensible space. So this I found an interesting because what's in our garbage cans? A lot of fuel. And even though, yes, plastic melts, it's what's inside of it that catches the fire and starts to burn. And so we look at all the different ways of how fire is getting in. And when it comes to garbage cans, if you don't have the space to create that 5-foot house, it's putting your garbage cans in an enclosure that doesn't burn you with to protect your cans. The other thing is, and it's always a recommendation, bring them somewhere where there's a house, put an enclosure. So there's other options you can do on vacation. One of the biggest things that came up in her research on these fires, but also in general, that's the big word of connective fuel. So it means just what it says, how fuels are connected. And if you look at where the arrows are pointing, that through how they saw the burn patterns, how the fire came through to those properties. One of the biggest connective fuels we have, pretty much every property has, that's a connective fuel. This is why in our home hardening, we talk about creating that separation of your wooden fence from your structure if it's attached at least 6 feet away. So it interrupts that connective fuel. Hedges, connective fuel. Hedges, green leaves on the outside, they're very dry on the inside. That's all wood. That's all woodsy material that fires love to burn. So those are all connective fuels, and those are what's these huge paths along houses and in between houses. Hot tubs are another connective, and that's only because of what they're made of and what's around them and how close. So anything that's close up against your house, if that catches, it's creating enough heat that now it's burning against your window. If you have wood around your window, that's going to eventually fire. Then it also gets underneath your doors. So if your doors don't have good gasket, rubber gasket, that's also another way for intrusion. So a lot of the examples that she's showing in her slides is how these things are starting to burn, how it's again part of that connective fuels concept. The connective fuels in zone. So there's been all the research on zone 0. All good, some not good, new coming up. One thing I can say is when I've been the Paradise Fire and now looking at the pictures that she's presenting here, it just goes to show that there is a when you don't have anything that'll burn. You could see the small burn pattern in the ground that kind of goes up the wall. Well, it goes through the eaves and there's cracks underneath the eave that led to the garage where it burned because some of that smoke and heat through those open holes in the eaves. So not necessarily vents, but the fact that there were cracks. So that's really important when you're gardening, that when you do a 360 around your house, you're looking in your eave, what kind of, because it finds whatever path it can. And this one got into the garage and was able to create that kind of damage in the garage. So she called this one a no combustible gate in zone 0. So you could see these are two houses that were right next to it. You see the one that's destroyed and you see the one right next door to it that, well, you could see that there's a metal fence that was connected to the other house, to their house. And then they probably had a wood fence that went along it that burned. But not having a fence connected to their house, that practically saved that connective fuel from getting to that next house. You could see the heat against all the stuff. There was a lot of heat that was going on, but not enough because there wasn't enough fuel for it to keep burning. So it's not to say this is just an indication, just evidence, data that you're collecting of look, how did this work out for this house? Well, it must have worked out because it's completely destroyed. So when we're looking at when we're doing our home assessment, and this is why it was hard with the ordinance. A lot of people said, well, this is like, but if we were to do an ordinance that made it easy for every structure, it would be like a 5,000 page document. So we had to write the ordinance as it was. But when we're doing, which is what I tried to explain when we first put out the ordinance, was every house is unique, every house is different, so we're looking at these pathways. We're looking at how the fire is going to, and what's the pathway that's going to take damage the house. We're looking at the construction of the house. We're looking at the house, what's around the house, what's in front, behind. So there's a lot of consideration that the inspectors make out in the property. This is a good indication showing you of how the pathway for this house particularly got in, where that house had vegetation. And that's that it's stucco, but it had vegetation up against, right under the windows. The windows, it got through into the window, into the structure. So that's another indication of how vegetation can create the vulnerability for getting fire into. Radiant heat was a big factor for damage. So this is a picture that was taken out from Paradise Fire. As you can see, there's a lot of trees around it. A lot of times we talk about trees. I try to educate that trees aren't a problem. A lot of times in fires, it's the structure that burns, not the tree structure. You could see a lot of the trees, they're all still standing there. Some are. Every house is flat to the ground. And this is where we start to look at how close structures are built together. This is why, with the whole ADU laws that are in place for the state of California, is very frustrating and challenging for fire officials, because we don't understand why the state is still wanting to build and build and build to create more hazards for the people who already live here. At some point, you got to say, sorry, we can't fit any more people, which is why we become more restrictive when it ADU. And what's going to make it challenging with the new moratorium on the building fire code is how many ADUs are parcel without proper separation. When the houses are built too close together, that's what we're doing. We're at radiant. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge because the towns need to meet requirements, but it's also in creating a hazard. So this is just that example on fire damage. This was a house that was titled detail. Every little thing matters when it comes to guarding and defense. This house, though you could see, you know, the metal kind of front, we've got some burnt act. Well, this house had tempered glass windows. They had zone 0, and they had no pathways that led to the house. Those stuff in the front kind of burned. They had mostly their defensible space was rocks and more vegetation that was not woodsy or wasn't ones that were more susceptible to, and a lot of space between them, which is part of that whole idea with your land is to plant in islands, because when you're planting in islands, you're creating separate space. Island, it can burn that island and fizzle out and be done. Fires are interesting because, like I said before, they keep finding the fuel. And they'll keep burning as long as they find fuel. But when there's no more fuel, the science behind fire is that the fuel's out of that triangle. So we have oxygen. When that fuel's gone, that fire has no more to burn. So the islands is such a great separates it. Here's another example of the little help. In this particular case, from what the information that Yana got on this fire was because the fire was burning so hot and so fast. So what they did on this one is they broke that connection. They just interrupted that path, and it was put a rock down and propped it open. So you could see the fire coming all the way up to that part of the fence, and it kind of stopped, but it didn't make its way to the house. So it's just something to think about. It's like, wow, okay, that disc from just a simple little thing as far as that separation from to your house made a big difference. Is that the reason why the house was saved? We don't know, but it's just food for thought. That could be, but it's how these little things matter. The photo to the left, firefighter kicked that one in because that's all he could do. The house next to it, completely down to the ground. This one survived. Was it that? Don't know. Was it enough for wind or through the gate there? And that's why it didn't have anything to latch onto to continue to burn? Possibly. But this is how we're talking about little things. Non-combustible walls and vegetation. Now we're looking at this. This was an interesting house is built that was built up to where the house is. On the right, you could see how much of it, the house to the right of it, that burned. So that house was destroyed. The house next to it completely survived. That radiation between the two didn't have a chance to communicate to anything. That wall created that barrier that protected that radiant house. So it's another way of how walls and vegetation can help slow a fire, reduce it, and even keep it from getting to your house. This is just a quick recap because how wildfires burn. Why? So I kind of touched on it a moment. There's 3 ingredients to a wildfire, to a fire in general. That's the fuel, that's the vegetation, ignition, that's what causes it, usually human or some kind of accident, arson, or and then the weather. The weather plays a big role. Hot, dry, windy, humidity. There's a lot of different things that contribute to how fast a fire will move or how hot it will burn. But you remove one of these things out of the equation and you have no more fire. It's extinguished. I like this slide because it really gives you an idea of the pathway wildfire, gives you the different ways of how fires reach. So we have the direct flame contact. That's how going from tree or connective, as we put connective fuel, somehow getting to your house, all the way to the vegetation around your house. Then we have embers. We have known now in reports that embers fly, and even from accounting from firefighters right out to the wildfires, they're like, oh my God, these things, the storm, instead of picturing like a bad rain, it's an ember storm of embers that are just being casted for miles from where they are. You can't even see the end of it. So embers being brought to your house, they hit your house, they fall to the ground. The first thing that's in the ground is whatever vegetation you have right there in front of your house. Of course, if it's by a window, that's where your windows become vulnerable. Then you have the radiant heat, and that's from anything that's right close to your house. There was a study, I can't remember if it's in this one, so if it's not, I'll bring it up, but there is done on why 100 feet of defensible space, how that came into play. Also why 10 plus 20 to 30 to 40 feet of structure to how they came up with these numbers. So let me see if I have that slide in here. This is just another way, another perspective. Sometimes I feel like changing perspectives gets committed to our brains better because we all look at things differently. So this is just a perfect example of how whether it's embers, whether it's flames that are already occurring, are carrying through the fence, then from one house to the next house. And so what does this mean? What's important for you? Most important thing is the goal is to reduce. That's what the defensible. We want to reduce how quickly the fire is getting to your house. Hardening homes to prevent those ignitions, that's the vents, that's the windows, that's your siding. That's even just from the base of your house, putting up, if you ever go to your house, go to the base of your structure, put your hand underneath and see what openings you have. Some houses are well sealed, some are not. How old your house is, have that void. Embers get into there, that goes straight into your sheetrock and your plywood, and that's the structure done. Even though it's stucco in the front, what's behind it is sheetrock and plywood. Great sources of fuel. Remove those connective fuels and structure density. All of these things is what we're trying to accomplish with the home assessments and the recommendations that we make. New construction, that's part of the no-brainer that we're hoping we can catch it on new construction. The existing construction is the challenge. These are some of the past fire lessons. So from these slides, lessons learned were a lot of research came out of these specific fires. It talked about the different weak points of what was found. So this is just a rundown. So the Tubbs fire really brought about vegetation, house events. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but you can see that all these different fires brought about different things we learned and why we're encompassing them into what we do today. Likely damage modes at varying distance. This was a slide that I want to show you. This is pretty cool. I just gave you the quick little snip, but he actually, this is Ediati from IBHS. He actually took structures, built them, started fires, and saw what kind of damage was being done between structures and seeing how far would a structure to not be damaged. And this is where he came with 10 feet, 20 feet to 30. When we got to 40 feet, he saw 100 that distance away from one that was already burned. So that kind of puts that in perspective for that radiant heat we talk about for the ADUs. It would be great if we could get 40 feet between buildings. So if you have a huge parcel in your building, great, 40 feet away from each other. Those are one of the things that came out of this research. I thought was watch the video. So if you can Google any of the Dr. Faraz Haddadi, IBHS. So increase in frequency and fires. Why? This is my personal opinion. This is what I have seen and have observed over time. This is Coffee Park, the way it looked on the left. This is what it looked like after the fire on the right. Amazing. Amazing when you look at the vegetation to the left and you look at to the right and what is still there and what was destroyed in between all of it. Housing. I just don't understand our housing and why our state still doesn't look at the danger that increasing housing is doing. That's why more fires are happening. Well, let me take that back. Not why more fires are happening. That's why destroyed, because we keep building more structures in areas that have had fires, and now we're developing them to make more room for housing. But we're creating our own demise. What my opinion is, because of it, is we need to change how we do things. If we keep out the height and we're going to have to keep building, then we need to build smarter and better. We need to make sure that what we're creating is a way to live with the wildfire, since we have to find a solution, which is why I look at it as we have to change our paradigm from building. We can't keep building houses the way we used to. We need to change how we're building them. We need to change how we set up our landscaping. And that's how I look at what we need, why it's important as we change our building codes and our fire codes, that we pay attention to how are we going to our neighbor for success as they keep building, which is scary for me when I see the Senate bill that was passed that is going to allow to make it easier to build quicker, because we can't change our codes and laws to protect. It has to be the way it is right now for the next 9 years. So it'll be interesting to see over the next decade if fire numbers of structures are destroyed. If we have plenty of firefighters are going to be putting out these fires. So we'll see what happens over the next decade. But at least if we're going to keep building, we need to build with the mindset that we need and survive on its own without firefighter interaction. Because that's the whole point, right? We think the firefighters are coming to save our neighborhood. They are not. They're trying to keep it from getting bigger. They're trying to contain the fire from getting bigger. They can't extinguish the fire. There's no water in the world that can put out a wildfire. They're just trying to keep it, contain it, and let it burn out what it has and not get any bigger. Because this is one of those nature pieces that's much stronger than we are. And we can only strategically plan with how we're going to go about containing fires. So what can we do as responsible homeowners? So what we've been trying to say for a long time, and we're hoping that people little by little will start to become more aware and educated on taking the steps to reduce the vulnerabilities of their structure, maintain their defensible space. And I want to explain defensible space in 2 ways. This is a great picture. They are doing protection. You can see that the yard is very open and it gives them a place to safely stand. When the firefighters come to a house to do protection, that defense is not just structure from fires coming in, it's to give the firefighters a place to and be able to provide that structure protection or to slow the fire. If there's a bunch of vegetation, a lot of it all around them, that is not a safe place for them to be. They can't do any help in that because they also have to look out for their own. This is a great video. If you Google IBHS Ember Storm, this one actually shows two houses, one made of our normal construction and one that's made with the more resistant construction with the zone 0. So they cast the embers. You see how much of the house on the left, how it burns and how it quickly burns from the gutters because of the vents, because of the window, because of the wooden deck that's up. And then you'll see the one on the right that's more non-combustible with the zone 0. The fire hits some of these bushes and it fizzles out because there's, so that's another great video to watch. Responsible homeowners, our zone 0, that's important. All of the things you do as homeowners, I can't say that it's going to 100% fail safe, but we're trying to provide a means to give your home a fighting chance, best that we can, what we know. The house on the right, the top right corner and the two on the two left corner, those are all pictures from homes that are actually in our, the other ones are off the internet just to get, but they were good examples. The far right-hand corner, that house on the right gave a perfect example of landscape smart. They created that one island in the front of the vegetation, and they have way more than 5 feet from there all the way to the, and it's like that all the way around. So it takes time and it takes effort, but we want to make sure that when we're thinking about our whatever we're doing for home hardening and our defensible space, that we're doing it in a way that still you have your vegetation. We're still being respectful to our land because we don't want to clear cut everything. We don't want everything. That's not how Portola Valley was. But what we do want to do is do what we can to restore Portola Valley to what it was like. We look at pictures, even that's not that long ago. If we were to look at photos, it looks a lot different than it did now. Even 100 years ago, what it looks like now. And back then there was wildfire. There were still wildfires, but it didn't destroy very much because the vegetation, we are surrounded by more than what we should have. So these are some of the examples, things that we can do for homeowners. Again, it's a project. It's a little bit at a time. It's going to take time. It took a long time to get to where we are now. It's going to take time to bring it to a different level of I guess, less vulnerable for your home. Some more examples, big things are the evacuation. We do have the engines that come through a lot of these. The street's already narrow, but we don't need it encroached more. Up those, clear that vegetation to maintain it, not remove the trees, and it's just limbing them, pruning them, restoring them to how they should. These are those privacy hedges. This is a cross section. You could see how beautiful and green on the outside, but how dead inside. These love to burn hot and fast. Some more thoughts are, these are just areas. You could see some of that 6-inch vertical clearance that I was talking about from the base. So if you're looking at the base of your structure, it is what kind of voids do you have? Because that's where you're looking at what's coming in from. These are some more vulnerable locations for homes, and a lot of these were taken from the San fire. So rain gutter to roof edge, your wall. These are all, oh, those are the two pictures on the bottom. That was the IBHS that was done with the embers into attic space. The video is great. It's very interesting to see, but I just took some snapshots so you could see how the embers are flying in through those vents. Whatever you have in your attic, they're going to burn, and the destruction of the house. And then the fence guidance. It does make a difference to have just that simple 6 feet away from your. I love this photo. It helps people wrap their mind of what's priority, how you should go. So you'll see the high priority all the way to the priority, and then it's color coordinated. So it just kind of helps give you some guidance on back of how. And this is a great way to do that. So it's just it's a great image. I love showing this one. It gives people a good idea of where to. This question came up some time ago. Presentation I did, somebody had asked, and Headwaters Economics, they did a study that came out, and they studied on the cost of construction, because that was always something people would say to me, oh, this ordinance is going to cost us a lot of money. Home hardening is going to cost us a lot of money. It was interesting to see what they came out with and they did a comparison. But you could see that the increase in construction for home hardening from cost of non-resistive construction was approximately $2,800 over per home. Now, that's the baseline. Now, if you're going all out like that, not just highest quality, but like if you're really looking at the nicest of what you like, then you're looking at more into the $18,000 in construction overall. So it kind of depends on how you want the look of your home to be. But it's really not that much more than what you would expect in construction. So this is just a great comparison. Kind of gives people an idea of what the costs would be. And I like the way they color coordinate it to the attached deck. So it was just great information. So it was great that they did this research out there. I always put this in all my presentations. I try to keep educating. We always talk about during a wildfire, the whole point of your defensible space and your home hardening is for your house to survive without firefighters coming to your house, how it's going to survive on its own. This is the WUI placard. When there's a wildfire that comes to our district, not be our guys that are, it's going to be all the support resources that come in from counties, states, parts of the country to come help. When they come, this is how they assess your house. They look at 4 different things. They look at their access. Can they get up your driveway? Can they get down the driveway? Is it open? Is it not? Is it tight? Is it too steep? Is a grade too steep? Get up and turn. They look at all these different things because once they enter your property, they need fast. They look at what kind of water sources are around. They do need to refill their engines, and if they're doing structure protection, they do. Defensible space, like I mentioned before, it's not just to protect your structure, it's to give them a. So they look at, do you have defensible space? Can they safely, any firefighter safely operate here? And then they look at for civilians that are. These are placards that get put in the tree. When we did the wildland training here, if you saw the helicopter, if you had the chance to, it landed here next to the preschool and in the open field, but they did all the wildland training there. Well, when they did, I think it was Santa Maria, it was the Highlands, when they went up through there, they left placards as a training, how narrow and how difficult it is to get around our district. And so they were leaving these placards and residents were calling and they're like, oh my gosh, they rate. What does this mean? And, you know, we explained it is training, but at the same time, this is how your house would get rated. So it was it's scary, but it's a wake up call too, because they don't know who you are. They have no relationship. They're just going straight off of what they need. So when other firefighters, these get put on the tree. When firefighters come through and it's that time that they have to come and do, oh, no, can't do this one. It's not safe for me. So I put this in just to bring awareness of what really happens when there's a fire. As a community, it really does. It really makes me sad, and it's challenging for me. You know, the go-getters of our residents that are out there that do, they really want to do a lot for the neighborhood, and then you have ones that just or never done anything ever. And so that it takes everybody. If we want to be a safe community, a fire adapted community, we got to put the effort in all together. We do as much as we can to support those efforts, but you could see some of these are before and afters. A lot of it is people have, you got to maintain your roads. You got to maintain. Woodside Fire, what are we doing to help? We try to get as many Skyline, 84 to do some of our major areas. Denise Ania, our previous fire marshal, she does a lot of work with grants, and she tries to include Woodside Fire into a lot of the work so that it benefits all our residents. We work with open space and county parks for defensible space, especially when it butts up to neighborhoods and homes. We do our best to support and encourage and keep up with them mitigation, because they're also sharing the land with the rest of us. And the removal of tree hazards near power lines, working with PG&E with that. We also do our chipping program, which again, if we can get that year round, would be fantastic. Once that, we're doing annual home assessments. We have the Fire Marshal Safety Corner. I pop up in different parts of the district. Haven't done. It's been a little busy for me, but something I want to. Usually gets posted up out there for a few hours to really. Have done a lot of workshops and a lot of presentations now, why I'm recording so that I can post them onto YouTube and hopefully raise awareness that way. And if you live in an area where there's an so where do we go from here? How do we prepare for this? CZU was the closest fire that we had that happened. And it was right over a hill. And were we prepared at that point? Probably not. Are we better now? We're getting there, but it's progress. I just ask the community to keep chipping away at it, but to stay informed. Come to our website. We have done so much on our website for education, for information. Frankly, there's so much stuff in there that it's hard to even find. But I will say that the best way is through the magnifier and the type of whatever you're looking for, and it'll bring up the results for you. It's hard to know which pathway people are going to take, so it's hard to set. I think I only have a couple more slides. I came across, Cal Fire has a great. They give you a breakdown of every single thing and even how to rate your. I think I have that QR code at the. But the things to take away: harden your home, create defensible space, and select fire smart plants. The next important thing is have your evacuation guide, have an evacuation and evacuate. Get your home ready, get your animals ready, find ways how you're going to protect that so that when it does happen, you're also prepared. Preparing is not just house. There's so much more you need to prepare for. It's an ongoing work. This is what I was talking about that Cal Fire has. It's called Stay Safe and Stay Informed with Fire Planner. Pretty cool. I went through it. I did it for our house that we have. It's pretty nice how they've really done a lot of work on this. It gives you your top priorities based on where you are, your address, construction, your house. gives you a lot of information. So it was a pretty cool source to have so that you Firewise communities, please, I encourage everybody to become Firewise. We actually have 13 now. I got to add them on here. Time when I did 12, which from when I started, we had either 3 or up to 12. That's pretty amazing in 3. That's given that most of these applications take they are so the state is NFPA is so impacted with the long time to go. So please encourage your communities. It's hard to find that front runner but someone's got to start stepping up to get those done. These are just simple resources for with QR codes. Everybody should have Genesis on their phone. Genesis took over Zone Haven. You should know what zone you live in. You should Genesis or needs to be evacuated. So make sure you have that on your phone. SMC alert, please sign up. It is an opt-in. For example, 4th of July, I put messaging out on SMC alert. Anything red flag warning day, there's a lot of information or is a hazard. Stay informed with Woodside Fire. I put our code. WPV Ready, the EPIC program. They do so much, so many resources. I encourage people to be a part of the EPIC program. They have a lot of resources, a lot of links, a lot of time on. So please be a part of the organization, become aware. And that's the end. Thank you, everybody.
That is a great presentation. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? Go ahead.
You'll be happy to know I spent 10 physical hours last weekend raking.
That's awesome.
5 hours each day in the hot blazing. My back was killing me on Monday. That's just a fun side note. What happened with the idea about the evacuation tags? Are they still kind of on the table?
They are. So they weren't brought up at our command staff meeting.
And can you clarify what the evacuation are?
Yes. So it came out, there's some evacuation other cities of the state. And basically it was a tag that you put up. So it tells fire personnel that people evacuated so that we're not spending the time trying to figure out if people. But there was some interesting comments that came of some of those things create problems because now people know that there's nobody in that house. So that was part of the discussion. So what we thought about was instead there's universal languages that are used just among fire community that we can utilize. You need to see that's could be because it's being marked as like, dead tree. So that's what we started to think of rather than tags that say evacuation, there'll be a tag that's universal that only fire people. So it's something that's in discussion that'll be brought up at the.
Interesting. In the future, I'd imagine there'll be an app that you press. Some AI
Right.
that will know.
Yes.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the?
So Kim, I've gotten a lot of questions. It came out in the LA Times of the fact that plants actually protect buildings.
Yes. So with that I had spoken to a couple of chiefs that are doing research right now. One's in Berkeley and the other one is somewhere in. They have been taking that research and information, actually have been some other companies on actually doing research to see how much that holds water to it. I have not looked at them myself. I don't, unless it's peer-reviewed research. I don't really spend my time with articles. Yeah. So I have not at anything yet. I've heard it from people it coming up. So I need to see more about it. But what I will say, just without look, there is value in vegetation for sure. That's why we look at vegetation, how it slows fires, and create a barrier to keep the fire from coming. What I can say is what I've seen with embers is it doesn't help with directly around the house within that zone. You have like these, say hypothetical example. You have these trees, they're burning. It would depend on what's on the outside of this building. How is this building? That tree right, it's on fire. It's slowing the fire, but it's creating gradient heat that now these windows, they're not double pane or temp fires in. So there's a lot more that weighs into. I think all vegetation has its own way of being to survive themselves, which is interesting. If you look at a lot of our natives that have been around for a long time and have survived fires, they create their own defensible space just within themselves, which is why they're planted, they grow the way they do. Our non-native plants, they're the ones that out create. But I think there is a lot of value in it. But again, it would depend on how a building is set up and how that vegetation will interact with that. But I would need to see more, yes. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Kim. Thank you so,
Thank you.
we appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Okay, so, next thing on our agenda is an update of, the WPC's final report and recommendation on PV ordinance 2022-447, 79A.3 decking surfaces. So I just want to thank Marianne because last month she said, well, gee, you're not having any luck moving this report along. Why don't you contact the, wow, were you right? So I sent an email, to their chair, Carter War, and and he copied the mayor and said, well, we want to work with, the WPC. We want to move this report forward. We have the same concern. And so, excellent, excellent suggestion. And so I'm hoping to have some updates on that report in coming months. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. So, subcommittee updates, MJ has left mitigation subcommittee update. Kim, do you have any updates?
No, not today.
EPC committee updates, Kim or Marion, do you have any updates? No? Okay, okay.
I'll just say that we have a concept for the emergency operations for the town of Portola Valley developed, and it's just under review right now by our subcommittee
Okay,
and that committee. Too many committees.
all right. Any questions about that? Okay, finance and insurance subcommittee update. Wanda and I expect to final report for the insurance tracking form. We're gonna shut that down in September, which will, and we should have a report out by October. It's not gonna be much different than, it'll be more thorough than the report we gave, last month. Conservation Committee update.
I have a point. Helen Walter who is the Conservation Committee's alternate liaison. She was at the Conservation Committee meeting last month, and she brought something interesting to the Conservation Committee. She suggested that we look into goats doing fuel mitigation and maybe getting neighbors together. And what what we were saying that this would be, this fits much better into this. So we have not been taking this, and I just wanted to bring it to you.
Marianne, I'd like to go on record saying, and I'm serious, I've been an advocate of goats,
Great.
for many years, and I have never gotten any traction. And MJ might have more. There's, and when Stanford was here, I seem to recall that goats eat different vegetation different times. So it's not as straightforward as just getting, hiring someone to bring goats. You have to know what they're eating and what the time of the season is. So, and our charter is not, I'm not sure that would be within our charter because we budget to get goats, but I suppose we could research a report.
It's not about money. To do some research,
Yeah.
like you say, and you might want to reach out to the Priory, because the Priory had goats. They did one season, they did goats, they must have some data. So the idea was that somebody takes this, looks at it, makes a recommendation, and then does outreach to the residents and says, here is something you can, do you want, it's expensive, we know it's the most, but here is whatever a report. Would you like to get Westridge or whatever, or get several homeowners together and band and then have goats come? So that was the idea Helen brought up, and I thought that was a good idea. I would not take, I'm just listing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
We could put it on the agenda, but I'm just thinking back on all the other projects I've had. The project where we got a neighborhood and we brought in landscapers and contractors and offered to do some kind of a discount, home hardening and defensible space and the different projects. And I'm not sure whether the goat project, and I am a huge advocate. If anything, it'd be the mitigation. I don't know if I would take it on. I'd have to think about it. Let me think about it. But somebody would have to suggest that they want to think about it in his.
Being that I'm on the couple things. One, I know a lot of the folks at Prairie can make a quick phone call and alleviating a ton of research. Ask, I heard you guys did it at one point. Was it good, bad, and why are you not doing it again or continue? So I'm happy to make that call. I don't quite have time for research on it. One thing that does concern me, I love goats. Two things. One, they have to come with a care that stays on site 24/7. And they also have to have the guardian live too. So it is a huge, it's not just dropping goats off a week. At the mountain lions that we have here, I know that there's enough, but, and coyotes. The other thing too is if Priory did it once and they're not continuing, that doesn't look good to me. So I don't know how far this is going to go.
Stanford did it too, and they did it, I believe, more recent than the Priory. And I do know that goats were eaten by the mountain, but that was the wedge, and the wedge is a primary mountain habitat. So, not surprised.
we're friends with, the folks that live in the, um, and they had the goats last year, I believe. And that's how I know kind of the details is how you have to, how you bring, it's a big ordeal. Livestock dogs are, you know, within the perimeter. I don't know if you have to have a fence. Yeah, yeah.
Well, also, when Stanford presented to the committee last year, we had on our committee Dee Bailey was, gosh, I can't remember exactly what. She was a contractor, but she had actually gone to school and specialized in the whole ecosystem and building friendly, painting. It would have been fantastic. And she did. She unfortunately had committee because of the caretaking role in the post. And I think she got part-time. I really wanted those goats. And both Stanford and Dee were pretty clear. I wasn't going to get those goats. I mean, I'll just be completely honest. I think that if we were going to take on some kind of a coordination effort, I would rather hit a Firewatch neighborhood and try to, we had this whole, several vendors who, if a community all wanted to go in, so many homes to do ember resistant fence, or we had landscapers that were willing to give evaluations defensible space in each area. And I think that would be perhaps more profitable. And I think actually this would better in conservation because it is the most expensive way to do it. And I think my inclination press more for education, how to create defensible space and home hardening as quickly and cheap as possible.
Actually, the more I think about it, from my experience, because there were goats in Westridge, goats make sense when you have a completely overgrown property. And, there was nothing before and you haven't anything, you didn't touch it, then it makes sense. But how many completely Windy Hill, probably
Yeah.
goats would make sense. But coming into Kiowa Court or whatever probably makes no
Well, and
sense.
Stanford said those goats are only going. So they're going to leave maybe the things that you want. So you know what's growing and what season it is, and what those goats want to eat.
Maybe we'll put it
Yeah. So okay. But
It was a
I'm a
thought.
huge.
We discussed it.
I cannot tell you. It's
So-
become a joke on this committee how many times. Yes. Question.
No, suggest comment. If you want goat data, Sequoia has used goats. And we've tried them at slightly different times. We have some experience with what happened, and if you want, I believe they're going to do them. Someone to be able to observe and so forth. The goats, they were there they come for a considerable period of time with a handler, with the dogs, with fence, with the babes. We've only lost one babe to mountain lion.
Ooh.
But,
And you're happy.
Mixed blessing. The, some of the stuff that we want them to eat, they don't. They don't like, poison oak.
Yeah. I remember Stanford saying that. Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah.
Very much too bad. Some things that they particularly like, we necessarily want them to eat. Rub out because munch from the bottom and just a tiny little. So, and in general, we're hoping to meet with the conservation, how to do islands better in our woods where we've had, so that we have, because we've got some laddering, and how best to manage that. Goats, once I've got a good sized shrub, are useless. So that there's a bunch of different aspects of that, that if you all want goat information, we have several years of data.
It sounds like an agenda item for next meeting.
maybe even scheduling the goat person from the Sequoias to come and talk to us. Is there an expert in goats?
It's the same company that we have used here. And I don't know contract information, but I imagine that I can get that from Sequoia. for you.
I still question if it belongs in this.
Well, that's up to you. Yeah, I'm not,
Well, no, it's up to us.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Um, Okay.
the thing is, I understand that you're tending to say conservation. However, conservation tries to really steer clear from fire. We are not a fire committee. So that's, you see, that's the, yeah. And that's where it comes in, because I know you have the fuel mitigation stuff. And from my logic, it would fit into, because that's what you're looking at, fuel mitigation.
And given that MJ had to leave early. Do you want to discuss with her? Do you want me?
No.
No, I'm talking Kim.
Oh, I'm
I mean,
sorry.
Kim. I mean, do you want to, I mean, we've just got so much education stuff going on, education with the fire ordinances coming up.
Mhm.
Is this something you think the mitigation committee would be in?
I mean, I like your tie back to the Firewise community. Spending more of our effort trying to get the collective, costs down with other areas. I just don't, why don't we do this? Why don't from now to the next meeting, put it on as the item. I'll talk to talk to her too. I'll make that call to Priory, and then perhaps we can get a little bit of information.
How about we do next meeting,
Mhm.
because I know we decided we weren't going to meet in August. We're going to talk about goals. We're
Mhm.
going to talk about where why don't, during that discussion, we brainstorm and decide if this is one of the things we to focus on, because I think it is going to be a presentation. It is going to be, somebody's got. So why don't we, this is a great idea. Let's bring it up in the goals session for next meeting.
People
Mhm.
can think about.
And then we should all be thinking about what do we have some goals for the next months? Are we good with that?
So I have a
Yes.
related question. Between conservation and Firewise, if we want some education and some advice on how in our wooded area to do the islands, such that I'm keeping plants that I want to. I'm an Easterner, I don't know your plants yet. What plants I want, how to do the islands, how to cut down on the laddering. That's not something that's covered. I mean, it says if your plant's this high, you have to go 3 times that.
Are you interested in fire safety, or are you interested in doing it in a conservation wise way?
You got it.
And
We're,
then that's conservation.
we're interested in fire safety in a conservationally wise way.
That's the conservation
Therefore-
committee.
Yeah, that's, so when we look at this, then we bring in the fire department. We do it then together with the fire department. So we look at the plans, but then we bring in Kim or somebody to say the official word of the fire department, because we are not the fire department.
Right. Mike Tenay said he would come back and so.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mary Ann's on the committee because anytime we talk about Solar Valley and creating defensible space, we always have one brain cell in, we have to do it in a conservationally wise way. Right. That's what conservation's on. And then now we're thrilled to have somebody from EPC, because when we think about wildfire as well, it's nice be thinking also about emergency situations.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
And goats are kind of
I
would be
wish-
part of a practical that would be part of a practical strategy like the wildfire fair, where this would be a way to create defensible space. So it could go in either committee.
I wish it, it would go to the Windy Hill folks. That's what's really important for our town. We have this sun, whatever fox up there with the coyote brush, and they do eat, watch them eat coyote brush.
And they don't consider,
No, I don't know what meat. I don't know.
so we had Mid-Penn out here to talk to us over a year ago, but I no longer have that. You know, I used to have a town manager where I could say, I want Mid-Penn, I want, and they had to come. And now I don't know whether we have. So, okay, great. Okay. Month, no one could make the August meeting. Good for September. I can do September 17th. I can also do, October's 15th. I'm good either way. I know, okay. Is September good for everybody? So let's say our next September 17th. You have to wait while I hunt and peck, because I can't tie it. This is really sad. Okay. So can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Okay, everyone vote. Thank you very much. Oh my gosh, it was a fantastic